So I'm going to tell you about Sylvia Likens and Gertrude Banaszewski, which was a very brutal murder that happened in Indianapolis in 1965. The murder happened in October. It was a torture murder, which began in July, actually late July of 1965. And it included sexual humiliation, lots of beating. A Coy Hubbard would actually pick her up and practice judo slams and would throw her broken body to the ground over and over until he got bored and she would stop moving. They would beat her with like poles and hammers and shovels, and they would do this in the middle of the night for neighbors to hear. No one really cared. They'd make her drink her own urine and feces. It was really degrading and dehumanizing what they did to this 15-year-old girl, which many people speculate, and even Paula Banaszewski, the daughter, speculated was actually in the court case was because her mother was jealous because her mother has a very sunken face. She grew up with clinical depression, and she was a beaten, battered woman, and she's taking it out on this young, pretty girl in her prime. The main perpetrators we're going to be looking at today are Richard Hobbs, Clay Hubbard, Paul Banaszewski, and the rest of the Banaszewski clan, and mainly Gertrude, the mother of the Banaszewskis, who was also in an intimate relationship with 14-year-old Richard Hobbs, and Clay Hubbard was dating Paula Banaszewski. So he would come around and they would throw her down the stairs and beat her and carve I'm a proud prostitute with a heated hook. And they would do this all the time. And this is 3 months of torture daily, which stemmed from because when Sylvia Likens began to live with his family due to their parents, Jenny and Sylvia Likens' parents were traveling carnies, or carnival goers. I guess this is derogatory. I don't care. My grandpa was a carny, but he needed somewhere to keep the kids. His daughters knew Paula Banaszewski, so Gertrude offered to board them for $20 every 2 weeks. As soon as the payments started getting late, she started just really beating these girls. And Jenny, the younger sister, had polio, so defiantly Sylvia would take the beatings for her younger sister, which would actually really piss off Gertrude, because Gertrude would immediately start making her live in the basement with the dog, and again would just start beating her. They all used her as a human ashtray. She was covered in cigarette burns. They would light matches under her fingers if they thought that she was stealing whenever she got money by doing actual work. And they would do that till all of her fingers and her hands were blistered. And so you're wondering, how did this go on for so long? How did the criminal profiling go on? How did they catch it? Well, there was zero criminal profiling, actually. They kind of screwed themselves. So eventually, being malnourished and beating a small 15-year-old girl and judo throwing her will kill her. So after they killed her on October 26th, really they killed her on the 25th, the night of the 25th. They hid her body in the basement, not knowing what to do, and they ended up just bringing it up, giving her body a warm bath. Well, she was actually still alive, and they gave her a warm bath. She died in the bath, gave her last words to Jenny, "I want to see Daddy." So then they dressed her, put rubbing alcohol on the 150 wounds that covered her body, as if that would do anything, to this broken, beaten girl who really didn't do anything. No, she didn't do anything. Her father stopped paying, but clearly, even if she did do something, you don't deserve to be tortured and murdered by an entire family, a grown woman and children, and your peers and people that were part of your community. But so they dressed her body up. They put her in a bed, and they had her actually write a forced confession letter when she was still moving around the day before, that she went out with some older high school guys, and she came back and she was like this. So the idea was that they would make it seem like she predicted her own brutal death, and that she would end up being covered with healed wounds. So I guess these boys were just doing this for 3 months of their own consent. So that plan already was not a good idea. But this is the reason there was no criminal profiling, is they end up calling the police. They have Coy Hubbard call the police, a neighbor boy who was in on it, and say that, "Oh, she's dead, blah, 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 blah." The police come there, and they're like, "We found her like this." Jenny Likens actually goes up to the officer as soon as everyone's kind of moving around the room and said into his ear, "Get me out of here and I'll tell you everything." And that's exactly what happened. They did make a insanity plea. Gertrude Banaszewski did, the mother. It didn't work out. She pleaded insanity 3 times. All the 3 psychiatrists that came in to do examination all said that she was clinically fine. Really, there's nothing wrong with her except that she was, not human. She was, a monster. Yeah. So really, there is a total lack of criminal psychology used in the courtroom, and there was really there's not a lot of criminal profiling because Gertrude Banaszewski was a bad criminal. She did not plan on, I think, actually killing her. She probably thought she could torture her forever because this woman was a monster. She thought she could just keep her alive on her by making Sylvia drink her own piss and, eat her poo and eat trash, rotted trash out of the garbage, and make her puke into a plate or her hands and make her eat it up again and then puke it again and then kick her on the floor. Treat her worse than you would a mutt, right? Worse than you would any animal. So she thought this would go on for a while. She would also say a lot of times in the courtroom, "I don't remember," when asked about really anything. And of course, later, many interviews in prison, she knew exactly what she did. She was just trying to get away with it. And she was actually nicknamed Mom at Indiana State Penitentiary, which was very disgusting because what mom would do that to somebody? Yeah, that is Gertrude Banaszewski versus the state. With Sylvia Likens, a very brutal slaying of a young innocent girl who only wanted to live and was protecting her sister in the only way she knew how, because she was just a 15-year-old girl in 1965 Indianapolis, where neighbors would hear you get beaten with a shovel and say, "Yeah, I guess she was doing something wrong. I hope you learned something. I hope you can be empathetic towards this." Sorry, there wasn't a lot of criminal profiling. They weren't very good criminals. They did not want to get away with it. Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.